It looked like dominance. But beneath the surface, something didn't feel right. When the lights went out at the opening race of the 2026 Formula One season, one team didn't just win, they controlled everything. Every corner, every straight, every lap. It was clinical, precise, almost too perfect. Fans called it a comeback. Rivals called it suspicious. Because what we witnessed that weekend wasn't just performance, it was separation, a gap so large, so unexpected, that it immediately raised questions across the paddock. How does a team suddenly find nearly a second per lap in a sport where milliseconds decide everything? The answer, as it turns out, may not lie on the track at all. It may be hidden deep inside the rule book, in a detail so small it was almost invisible. And now, that tiny detail has exploded into one of the biggest controversies Formula One has seen in years. Because this isn't just about speed anymore. This is about interpretation, about intelligence, and about how far a team is willing to go to win. The rules were clear, or at least everyone thought they were. Formula One's 2026 regulations were designed to reset the playing field. New engines, new limits, new opportunities. The FIA wanted closer racing, tighter competition, and fewer dominant eras. One of those rules focused on a critical engine parameter, something that directly impacts power output and efficiency. The limit was strict, non-negotiable. But there was one problem. The rule didn't account for what happens under real racing conditions. While most teams built their engines to comply exactly with the written limits, one team asked a different question. What happens when the engine is pushed to its absolute limit? Because in Formula One, engines don't just operate, they evolve during a race. Temperatures rise, materials expand, tolerances shift, and within that transformation lies opportunity. Engineers realized that under heat, the engine's behavior subtly changes just enough to cross into a completely different performance window. Technically, the car passed every test. Legally, it followed every rule. But in reality, it was playing an entirely different game. And no one noticed until it was too late. The reaction was immediate, and it wasn't quiet. Inside the paddock, confusion quickly turned into concern. Teams began comparing data, engineers started digging deeper, and drivers, the ones who feel every vibration, every gain, every loss, knew something was off. Because this wasn't normal performance variation, this was domination. Rival teams found themselves chasing shadows. Strategies didn't matter, setup changes didn't help. No matter what they tried, the gap remained. And that's when frustration began to boil over. Customer teams, those using similar power units, were especially vocal. On paper, they had access to the same technology, but on track, they were nowhere close. The difference wasn't hardware, it was understanding. Because in modern Formula One, knowledge is power. Knowing how to extract performance, how to manage energy systems, temperature windows, and deployment strategies is often more valuable than the machine itself. And that knowledge, it wasn't being shared. Suddenly, the grid wasn't just divided by speed, it was divided by information. When the governing body finally reacted, the damage was already done. The FIA had no choice. Pressure was mounting. Teams were demanding answers. Fans were asking questions. Had the rules failed, or had someone simply outsmarted them? After days of internal discussions and technical reviews, the FIA reached a decision. The testing procedures would change. No longer would engines be checked under controlled, static conditions. Instead, new tests would replicate real race environments, measuring performance where it truly matters: under heat, under stress, under pressure. On paper, it was the perfect solution, but in reality, it created a new problem: timing. Because the rule change wouldn't come into effect immediately. It would take a few races before the new checks were implemented. And in Formula One, A few races can change everything. That window, small but powerful, became the most valuable advantage on the grid. This is where the story becomes something bigger, because now the fight for the championship isn't just happening at 300 kilometers per hour. It's happening in meeting rooms, in technical briefings, in quiet conversations behind closed doors. Teams are no longer just building faster cars, they're building smarter strategies. Some are trying to replicate the advantage, others are pushing for stricter enforcement, and a few are already thinking ahead to the next loophole. Because that's the reality of Formula One. Innovation and regulation exist in constant tension. Every rule creates a boundary, and every boundary invites someone to push it. The question is no longer, is it legal? The question is, how far can you go before someone stops you? And by the time that happens, it might already be too late. But beyond the technology, beyond the politics, there's something even more compelling: the people. Because behind every machine is a driver fighting for legacy, a team fighting for survival, engineers chasing perfection. And when controversy enters the picture, emotions follow. Rivalries intensify, alliances shift, respect turns into suspicion. Former teammates now find themselves on opposite sides of the debate. Friendly relations become tense. Every comment, every interview, every reaction carries weight. Even small moments, a sarcastic remark, a subtle jab, begin to reveal the pressure building beneath the surface. Because this isn't just about winning races, it's about proving something. Proving that your success is real, that your advantage is earned, that your place at the top is deserved. And in a sport where perception matters as much as performance, that battle can be just as important as the one on track. Everything now leads to one moment, a turning point that could redefine the entire season. When the new regulations finally take effect, the advantage, the one that changed everything, will be tested under a completely different lens. And that's when the truth will be revealed. Was this dominance built on a single clever idea, or is it something deeper, something more sustainable? Because if the performance disappears overnight, the narrative changes instantly. But if it doesn't, then the rest of the grid has a much bigger problem. Either way, the outcome will shape the championship. It will decide who was truly ahead and who was simply unprepared. And as the world of Formula One watches closely, one thing is certain: this season won't just be remembered for who won, it will be remembered for how they did it.